going down.
Hello friends, welcome to another class by Daily English Classroom. In today's class, we are learning the lesson, The Best Investment I Ever Made by J Cronin. And for those who haven't seen the first two parts of the video, I'm going to give you a quick recollection of what happened so far. And we have seen, this is a story, this is an anecdote by J Cronin. He talks about his personal experience when he was returning from the United States, and on board the ship he met a person. The person was observing him all the time and spying on him, and he doesn't know why this man is looking at him. And on the last day of the voyage, this man approached him and talked to him, and why this man was very curious and why was he looking at the doctor all the time, and what is the story that connects this man to Dr. J Cronin. Now, for that you have to go back to something that happened 25 years ago. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel so that you will get more classes daily. Okay, let's go to paragraph number 10. I was a young doctor at the time and had just set up a practice in a working class district of London. On a foggy November night, towards 1 o'clock, I was awakened by a loud banging on the door. Hurriedly, I threw on some clothes and went downstairs. It was a sergeant of police, in dripping helmet and cape, mistily outlined on the doorstep. A suicide case, he told me abruptly, in the lodgings around the corner. I had better come at once. So let us see what happened 25 years ago. 25 years ago, our doctor J Cronin was just a young man who has just completed his studies and started his practicing as a doctor. And it happened in the month of November. It was the cold season and it was a foggy night with full of snow falling and mist. And a person came there and he knocked at the door. The doctor was sleeping at that time. It was midnight, after midnight, about 1 o'clock at night. Someone banged on his door and the doctor, he woke up from his sleep and he opened the door and found that it was a sergeant of police who came there for a help. And he wants him to come and examine a person who has committed suicide, and he just informed the doctor that there was a suicide case happened near to his house in a lodge. It was the duty of the police officer to confirm if the person is actually dead or not. For that he needs the help of a physician or a doctor, and so he approached this doctor at that time at midnight and requested him to come with him to that location where a man has committed suicide. Let's go to paragraph number 11. We walked the short distance in silence, even our footsteps muffled by the fog, and turned into the narrow entrance of an old building. As we mounted the creaking staircase, my nostrils were stung by the sick sweet odor of illuminating gas. On the upper story, the agitated landlady showed us to a bare little attic, where, stretched on a narrow bed, lay the body of a young man. So the doctor and the sergeant of police went to that place, and it was the month of November and the fog was falling, and even the sound of walking was not heard. It was silenced or muffled by the fog. And they reached in front of an old building, and then they climbed on the creaking staircase. The staircase was very old. It was making some noise when they were walking. And when he was climbing on the staircase, he got a strange smell. It was the smell of gas. His nose was filled with the smell of gas. It really irritated him with the smell of the gas, and he did not understand from where the smell was coming from. And then they saw a landlady, the owner of the lodge, and she was a little bit agitated and was afraid because the person was staying in that house, in the attic of that house. Attic is a room on top of a building. This lady was very much agitated because this man was staying in her house. And there was the odor of gas. Odor here means the smell of gas. And on the second story of the building, the story here means the upper part of the house. And in the attic they found that a man was lying there on a small bed, and this man has committed suicide by turning on the gas. Let's read paragraph number 12. Although apparently lifeless, there remained the barest chance that the youth was not quite beyond recall. With the sergeant's help, I began the work of resuscitation. For an entire hour, we labored without success. Despite our most strenuous exertions, it appeared useless. Then, as we were about to give up, completely exhausted, there broke from the patient a shallow, convulsive gasp. Half an hour of redoubled efforts, and we had the youth sitting up, gazing at us dazedly. Slowly, he seemed to be realizing the horror of the situation. When the police officer and the doctor came there, this man was already dead, or they thought that the man was already dead, and the chances for a recall was beyond the reach. Anyway, the doctor tried to help that person, and he tried to bring him back to life by doing resuscitation. Resuscitation is the process of correcting breath and heartbeat by giving mouth-to-mouth breathing and other types of first aid techniques, and also pressing the chest and all these things. So the doctor and the policeman, they tried to do some resuscitations to make the man bring back to life, and they tried very hard for 1 hour, and they become very tired or exhausted for this 1 hour's work. They tried frantically to help this man, to bring him back, because they want to save the man, and it was of no use, and they found that then it's not possible and he is dead. They almost confirmed that this man is dead, and they stopped doing the resuscitation and they gave up. At that time, they noticed a slight movement or a breath coming from, a gasp coming from this man, and that gave them some hope of bringing this man back to life. So they started again working, and half an hour they worked with double effort, and at last they got the man and they brought him back to life. And now the man, he became conscious, and he was sitting there on the bed, and the man was miraculously saved by the strenuous effort of the doctor and also the policeman. And now he is sitting there on the bed, and he did not understand what was happening, because it was like coming back from death. And he was no idea what these people around him and what are they doing. It took him some time to understand the real horror of the situation, or about what actually happened there. Let's go to paragraph number 13. As he regained his strength, he told us his story. His parents were dead. An uncle had found him a position as clerk in a London solicitor's office. He had been in the city only 6 months. Utterly friendless, he had fallen victim to the loose society of the streets, had made bad companions, and like a young fool, eager to taste pleasure far beyond his means, had begun to bet on horses. Soon he had lost all his small savings, had pledged his belongings, and owed a bookmaker a disastrous amount. In an effort to recoup, he had taken a sum of money from the office safe for a final gamble that he was assured was certain to win. But this last resort had failed. Terrified of the prosecution that must follow, sick at heart, sunk in despair, he had shut himself in his room and turned on the gas. The man started talking to the doctor, and from his conversation we get an idea about this man. He came to this city only 6 months ago. He has got a small job. He was an orphan and he did not have his father or mother. They were not alive and he was an orphan. And he has got only an uncle, and this uncle helped him to get a small job as a clerk in a London lawyer's office. And this man, he has got no other friends, and therefore he fell into the company of bad people. He started spending his money, and he was spending more than what he is earning. And he was very much interested in enjoying everything and to tasting the pleasures, like everything. And he was spending more than what he actually gets from his job. He made a large debt, was eager to taste everything in the world, and therefore he spent all his money for doing all those things. And most importantly, he developed a kind of addiction towards betting, to bet on horses. He went to such programs and bet money on horses, kind of gambling. He fell into a kind of gambling team and started betting on horses. And many times, sometimes he got the money, sometimes he lost his money, and at last he lost all his wealth. And he wants to take all these things back. He wants to regain all those things that he had lost, and for that he decided to do a final bet, a final gambling, and he did not have any money to do that. So he took some money from the office safe, thinking that if he wins this race, and he was sure that he would win this race, and if he wins this race, he can put the money back into the safe. So with that idea in his mind, he took some money from the office safe, and again he bet on some horses, and in that game also he lost the money. So now he has no hope, and he is like a thief who had stolen money from the office safe because he doesn't have money to put it back. So thinking about the court proceedings and the other things that he is going to face, he decided to commit suicide, and he closed that door and turned on the gas and tried to die. He tried to commit suicide. This is the story of the young man. Let's go to the next paragraph. A long bar of silence stopped in the little attic when he concluded this halting confession. Then gruffly the sergeant asked how much he had stolen. £7 10 shillings. The answer sounded pitiful. For this paltry sum he had almost thrown away his life. There was a pause. The three of us, the sergeant, the landlady, and me, as the sole witnesses of the near tragedy, had the same unspoken thoughts in our minds, we decided to give the young man a fresh start. When the man completed his story, the three characters, the sergeant of police, the landlady, and the author, they were all really surprised to hear the story of this man. And the sergeant of police asked him how much money he had taken from the office safe. And he said, £7 10 shillings. And everyone was surprised. So your life is only worth £7 10 shillings. So for this paltry or very little amount of money, you try to die. How foolish you are. This was the expression on the face of the three characters, the landlady, the author, and the sergeant of police. Let's go to the next paragraph. The sergeant, at considerable risk to his job, resolved to make no report upon the case, so that no court proceedings would result. The landlady offered a month's free board until he should get upon his feet again, while I, making perhaps the least contribution, came forward with £7 10 shillings for him to put back in the office safe. Here we can see the three characters, they decided to give the man a fresh beginning. So the first one, the sergeant of police. It is the duty of the sergeant of police to report such cases to the court. And he did not report this case. And there is a risk in doing that, because if they come to know about this thing, he may lose his job. So even taking that risk, the sergeant of police decided not to report the case. The sergeant of police helped him by not reporting the case. And the landlady gave him free stay in her house for 1 month till this man becomes self-sufficient again. And actually she sacrificed her 1 month's rent. And thirdly, that is our author, J Cronin, and he himself says that he did the less important contribution, and what he did was he gave him the money, that is £7 10 shillings. So remember how these three characters helped this man. The sergeant of police did not report the case, the landlady gave him free stay for 1 month, and the author gave him the money, £7 10 shillings. With the help of these three persons, the man has got a new life, a fresh new life. The ship moved on through the still darkness of the night. There was no need of speech. With a tender gesture, Mrs. S. had taken her husband's hand, and as we sat in silence, I could not but reflect that it was the best investment I had made in my life. It had paid me no dividends in worldly goods, but had turned out to be immensely profitable. It stood out against all the bad investments I had made throughout the years, those foolish speculations for material gain, producing only anxiety, disappointment, and frustration. Now the author tells us that this amount that he has paid to this man, that is £7 10 shilling, is his best investment. Remember the title of our story, The Best Investment I Ever Made. So this amount, which is actually a small amount, but that amount has changed the life of a person. And usually we understand the term investment in terms of money. If you deposit some money in a bank, you will get some interest for that money, and that is called investment in the general sense of the term. But here invest means spending, and he spent £7 10 shillings. And what is the result? And what is the result if you deposit this money in the bank? If you deposit this money in the bank, then it will give you only tension and anxiety. Sometimes you will get some interest, sometimes the interest is less. So this is a worldly way of gaining wealth. And this one is not like that. This one is actually something that money cannot buy. He spent £7 and 10 shillings. And what is the result? The result is a young man living a new life, a social worker spending his entire time for the welfare of such unlucky, and his wife. They are doing social service, helping the people. So the only expense is £7 10 shillings, and the result is a man who is doing social service, who is helping many lots and lots of people, and to get that all he had to spend is £7 10 shillings. So don't you think, is that the best investment that one can do?